It's the pursuit, not the having, that matters.
What are the downsides being $1 billion entrepreneur?
It damaged my marriage. I was working 120 hours a week. It was grueling.
What's the biggest scam you ever saw in the nutrition industry?
Biggest scam is, oh God, it's so dangerous. So dangerous. We are in a state of decline. Printing money is theft. We add $1 trillion in debt in like every 100 days. That's not sustainable.
Is conflict necessary to be successful?
Your emotions are data points. The unexamined life is truly not worth living. You're having a biological experience. And if you want to suffer, choose poorly, and you will suffer.
Tom, what's a secret you've never shared or a story you've never told?
Oh, good Lord. I don't know if I've ever talked about this on a podcast before. This is the first thing that came to mind. So,
Tom, is it true you're worth $400 million?
no, but the internet would have you believe, and I let the internet say whatever it wants to.
Well, that's actually the reason I asked, because whatever you look on the internet, it varies wildly. Can you give us any clue?
Yes.
Is it a bit high, low?
It's 9 figures. That's all I'll tell people. That's not the kind of thing I want out on the internet anyway. So,
But 9 figures is seriously impressive.
thank you. Yes, it is life-changing to say the least.
Does it matter to you? You know, because people say money doesn't really matter, but I think maybe it does.
Well, so money is more powerful than people think, but it isn't what they think. So what people think it's going to do is make them feel about themselves the way they feel about other people, and it does not do that. But it is the great facilitator. So it lets you do things. You can marshal resources. So it's wildly powerful. And I want lots and lots more of it because it will let me do lots and lots more things. But I learned, thankfully, before I actually made money, I learned that it wasn't going to be able to touch my self-esteem. And ultimately, my self-esteem is the thing that controls my quality of life. So I'm very eager for people to understand what money really does because it's super useful, and what money does not. Because if they chase money thinking it will solve their emotional problems and then they get it, that's where you get real despair, because they sell their life for money thinking, well, but when I finally get it, then I will feel like I've crossed some sort of finish line. And you feel exactly the same. Whoever you become in order to get the money is who you become. The money won't change it. It's the person that you became that was capable of making the money that's going to matter to you.
You said something very powerful there, Tom, which I agree with, which is you're literally selling your life for money. Because if you think about it, you're exchanging your time for money. Your time is your life. Therefore, you're selling your life for money. Do people really understand the power of that statement?
No, people. So look, the unexamined life is truly not worth living. And I really encourage people to come to understand their own motivations and, quite frankly, to formulate a theory about how the world actually works. It's why I shifted from mindset to more world affairs, is I began to realize mindset's a big part of this process. Building a business is a big part of this process, but ultimately the world works in a certain way. And if you understand how the human mind works, that will help you. If you understand how collective bodies of humans work, that will help you. If you understand things at the state level, that's going to help you. So no, people do not have usually an overarching theory of how they work, how the world works, and that leads them to suffer needlessly. And ultimately, life is really about refining your sense of how the world works so that your predictive ability is extremely high. No one's ever going to hit 100%. But the more you can refine your ability to say, if I do this, I'm going to get this outcome and that person will react in this way, the more you can control your life. If you have no predictive validity, which we're living through this really weird moment where people embrace what sounds good, not what actually works. And I think that is super deranging in terms of quality of life.
So how does the world work?
All right, that's probably better to segment things out to really be able to go deep. So if you want to talk about the grand overarching theory that I have is that you're having a biological experience. Now, I say that's my overarching theory because that's going to influence your own life. That's going to influence your personal interactions. It's going to influence how you think about marketing, for instance, is all just a game of psychology. It's going to influence how you think about leadership. It's certainly going to influence, or better influence, how you think about politics. And getting people to like, that's what I want on my tombstone is you're having a biological experience. I just want people to understand that. I've been saying that long before the whole debate about biological reality. I just completely got caught off guard that that was a controversial statement. But to navigate my own life well and to not be beholden to my own emotions, I had to come to understand that I'm having a biological experience. I have a brain, and that brain works in relatively predictable ways. And if I could, instead of trying to judge it, if I could just map how it worked, gain that predictive ability over my own brain, then I should be able to navigate more wisely. And so nothing has informed my success more than my research into the human mind. And everything around us that we see is the product of human brains. And so that is a really important thing for people to master. So anyway, that's the overarching way to think about the world, is that it's all a bunch of people in the grips of their biology.
So, in order to master this powerful mind, are you saying we need to be able to have an objective view of how it works as opposed to a subjective or emotional experience within it, which clouds how it actually works?
Well, I think the real answer is that you are not going to be able to have an objective experience. There's a bit of a meta there in that once you realize that, you are having as close to an objective experience as probably the human mind is capable of. But it's understanding, okay, I am going to have a subjective experience, but that subjective experience is malleable, and I can shape what I call the frame of reference. So everybody has a frame of reference. The right analogy is to think of them as a pair of glasses. Those glasses distort everything, and the lenses are warped. And so you view the world through these funhouse lenses that just warp things in these crazy ways, but you can actually shape the lens. You'll never be able to get rid of the distortion, but you can control the distortion. So the cheesiest example is you look at a glass that has a liquid in it that reaches the halfway point. Is that glass half full or half empty? That's frame of reference. Now, that colors everything. So left and right divide in politics, right? That is frame of reference. And so your frame of reference is very simple. It's made of three factors: your beliefs about how the world actually is, your value system about how the world ought to be, and your biology. And those three factors will determine how you see the world. How you see the world will influence how you navigate the world. The people that you interact with, their frame of reference, will control your interactions with them, and really the collision of your two frames of reference. Once you understand that your own frame of reference is malleable, and if you want to see the world in a different way, then you can actually shape that lens by changing your beliefs, by changing your values, or by altering your biology. If you don't believe me, go take ecstasy. You will not be able to not feel an overwhelming sense of love for people around you because of the neurochemical cocktail that will flood your brain. And so that's but one of many examples of how just a slight alteration of your neurochemistry changes the entire way that you view the world. And so if people could just carry that with them all the time, that your beliefs have it's not as acute, but it's a far more profound impact on your life than a drug. Because it literally controls not what you look at, but what you see. And if I could get people to embrace those two elements, oh, I'm looking at the world through these distorted lenses and I can control the distortions, then you could change people's entire experience.
So, if life's a biological experience, what's the purpose of life?
You get to decide. But if I look at the closest thing again to objective reality, I would say that the purpose of life is to feel the way you want to feel in that moment. Now, how do you do that without it being deranging at the societal level? Because we are a social creature, the way to make a human flourish is a very simple recipe for fulfillment. And it is you have to work very hard to gain a set of skills that you find interesting for your own reasons that allow you to pursue what I call an honorable goal, meaning that it uplifts you and others. If you do that, then you will be ever marching towards fulfillment in a way that elevates you and the community. If you're doing that, you will have a positive emotional state that can withstand even mourning. And when you think about how can something withstand loss and mourning, because happiness certainly is not going to withstand that. Then you're really onto something. And the only thing that I know of is fulfillment. If somebody has a better recipe, I'm certainly here for it. But that has been the central focus of the thing that I pursue in my life, and the thing that, to your question about what's the purpose of life, that I have chosen to act as if I were put on this earth to help other people find that path to fulfillment. And so the whole idea of impact theory, which for people that don't know me is the name of my company, my theory is that you can help people get an empowering mindset, which is one that's going to lead you to fulfillment, through entertainment, that you can help shape somebody's distorted lens with these empowering ideas, if you can hit them on an emotional level. And so that's what I've, again, decided. I don't believe I was actually put on this earth to do that. But that's what I've decided to make my purpose. And everybody gets to choose theirs. And I would just say, be very careful, choose wisely.
Why? Why should we be careful and choose wisely?
Well, now we get to the holistic view. You're having a biological experience, and if you want to suffer, choose poorly, and you will suffer. If you, however, want to align with your biology and know that millions of years of evolution have put these algorithms running in your brain that will make you feel good or bad, depending on what you pursue, and it wants to ensure that you have kids that have kids. So I know there are algorithms running in my brain that make me feel good when I do the things that would traditionally lead me to have kids that live long enough to have kids, and they make me feel badly when I'm doing things that would have historically led me to not have kids that have kids. And so I'm very thoughtful, and that's where I came up with that recipe. I just thought, okay, what are the things that evolution would blindly, because I don't think it's a conscious activity, but what would a blind watchmaker need to positively incentivize and negatively reinforce? And so this is why hard work feels good. This is why being lazy ultimately erodes your sense of self. This is why we need to contribute to the group, and people that isolate themselves, their odds of or their rate of suicide just absolutely skyrockets, because we are a social creature. We are more likely to survive being a part of a group. The group is more likely to thrive if we're all contributing to that group, but at the same time, you run into the freeloader problem. So, I mean, look, man, we can go as deep as you want on this stuff, but it really is this hyper interconnected web of things that will always lead you back to you're having a biological experience. And just teasing out, like, what are all the things that lead into that? And it really does come down to pleasure and pain. And that's it. Certain paths, certain choices will be pleasurable, certain will be painful.
So you said about if you want to suffer, but is suffering not part of the journey towards the fulfillment? Is struggle not part of the journey? Do we not need to face conflicts of other people who challenge our values? Do we not need to deal with hard challenges head on, to be able to build a 9-figure company, or have deal with a big lawsuit or whatever? So isn't suffering the way?
Suffering is not the way. Suffering is certainly unavoidable, at least as I have experienced. Monks may tell you that there is a way to escape that trap. But again, you're having a biological experience. Nature is trying to use both pleasure and pain to move you in the right direction. But suffering really is your brain telling you something is wrong. Now, the question is it telling you that your frame of reference is wrong? And so you are suffering over something that you shouldn't be suffering over? You should not suffer over hard work. Hard work is wildly advantageous. The ability to endure suffering is incredibly useful if you're making progress, but you really do want to be mindful of suffering. You want to be mindful of your emotions. Your emotions are data points. You don't want to be beholden to your emotions, but you certainly want to be aware of what they are. You want to ask yourself why you're feeling that emotion, whether good or bad. You want to ask, does this emotion serve me? Is it moving me forward? Or is emotion simply shorthand, and I'm not taking the time to figure out what the conscious representation of my subconscious emotion is? Because emotions, just to be abundantly clear, are your body, including all the microbes in your microbiome, saying, I don't want you doing this, or I want you doing this. And if you take the time to go, whoa, I feel this emotion. What does this mean? Translate it into the lower bandwidth conscious mind, where I can now assign words to the thing that I'm feeling, because emotions are a very high bandwidth way of taking a lot of data and saying, hey, all of, whatever, 70,000 points of data that you would never be able to parse through right now, they make you feel this way. Just react. So there's a tiger in the bush. I'm scared. I have the desire to run away. Just run. Don't think about it. Don't try to process. Just run. Very effective. But in a business or in a marriage or raising children, if you get mad and you lash out at your kids with no sense of like, what's this going to do in terms of shaping their frame of reference as they get older, their sense of emotional stability, of being loved and connected, you're not thinking about that. You just, I'm mad, so I act mad. Now you can have this cascading effect of the unexamined life, never thinking about it, all these unintended consequences. And now, because you didn't translate the, again, high bandwidth emotion into the low bandwidth conscious words, you don't end up going where you want to go. And you're just being thrown around by your emotions. So taking it back to the idea of suffering, people shouldn't freak out if they're suffering. They should be able to weather that storm. But if you don't ever figure out why you're suffering, now you're just sort of blindly doing something stupid, potentially.
Okay, so if I can get this straight, are you differentiating between a negative emotion, which is feedback from the body, versus then compounding it with your own added emotions on top and suffering more than you need to?
Not trying to put a super fine definition to suffering. So I'm not trying to be semantic about it. What I want to convey is that suffering isn't, as you said, the way. Suffering is going to be encountered, but I don't want people to feel like, oh, I'm suffering, I must be doing it right. I want people to go, this is my goal. I'm running a test now as to whether this moves me, this action moves me towards my goal, going back to that idea of predictive validity. So I think that if I do this thing, it's going to move me closer to my goal. And then it's like, oh, I did this thing and I'm now suffering. Okay, that's a data point, very useful. It doesn't mean I'm onto something. It means I'm suffering. And so now I want to understand, is this suffering useful or is it counterproductive? If useful, keep going. If counterproductive, stop. I mean, if anybody that's ever worked out in the gym knows that there is pain, but this is good pain and I'm going to end up with stronger muscles because of it. And then there's bad pain. I've overdone it. I've torn something, pulled something, whatever. And if you keep working out when you've torn the muscle, I get it. You think, I don't want to be weak. I want to push through this. But now you're just making something worse. You may have a lifelong injury. So this is why you have got to translate emotion into the logical part of your brain and say, okay, why am I feeling this? And what is my goal here? Where am I trying to go? And is this behavior actually moving me towards my goal? This is a thing I find with people at all levels of their life, but it's extremely apparent with entrepreneurs. They don't have clarity of their goal. So they just feel something. Oh, this will be cool. And they don't think about their customer. They just think this sounds rad. And I'm going to make this product because it feels rad. I'm going to do this marketing message because it feels cool. And they never look at the data to see, is this working? Is this not working? And they'll do that in their marriage. They'll do that in their dating life. They'll do that with their kids. They'll do that with their soccer league, whatever. Like people just make that mistake over and over and over. And they end up in these cul-de-sacs because they're never asking themselves a very simple question. Am I progressing towards my goal?
So progressing towards a goal, is it unavoidable to experience both pleasure and pain?
At the end of the day, you are going to do a thing and it's either going to be pleasurable or painful. And the important thing is to figure out why. Why does this feel good? Why does this feel bad? There are things in life that feel awesome, and most of them will give you herpes. So it's like, you've got to be really thoughtful about, just because it feels good does not mean that it's actually taking me where I want to go. And just because it feels bad doesn't mean that it's not taking me where I want to go. This is why I'm saying there is no suffering is good or bad. Suffering is a data point. And as long as you translate that into a conscious assessment of the situation, it may mean lean into the suffering. It may mean stop doing this immediately.
So do you think everything, situation, event, person, has an equal set of upsides and downsides?
That would be impossible to say without getting into specifics. So at a general level, no, it would be unwise to say that anything has that sort of predetermined outcome.
Okay. So something can be all good and not bad, or all bad and not good.
Sure. And I mean, look, we have to distinguish how we're defining good and bad. So I have a definition for good. please understand when I say anything like this, I assume your goal is honorable. If you are a horrible, evil person that just wants to see others suffer, then this won't make sense. Assuming your goal is honorable, I say something is good because it moves you towards your goal. And I say something is bad or wrong because it moves you away from your goal. So yes, something can be hyper effective at moving you towards your goal, and it can be hyper ineffective and moving you away, and just be completely, is it going to be 100%? Probably not, but directionally it is so close to that, you might as well just see it in those binary terms.
If you feel an emotion, Tom, let's say just use the word get triggered. Um, are you able to delayer it such that you know that this emotion actually comes from something that happened 25 or 30 years ago, or is part of your childhood, and actually it's not really relevant in the present moment?
I probably wouldn't have the clarity to be able to walk you backwards to the exact thing in my past that caused that. I haven't found that to be super necessary. But I do go back to, ooh, I have an insecurity about that. And so I'll be able, if it's a negative emotion, I'll almost always be able to track it back to the source. Like, oh, wow, that's interesting. I didn't realize I was insecure about XYZ. So yes, that if people are thoughtful and they are not judgmental about themselves, if you journal enough, the odds that you'll be able to say in a single sentence of 35 words or less, I feel this way because of this thing. Now, some people may be able to track that back to why they have that insecurity. For me, as long as I understand, oh, okay, I have an insecurity about this, then I just start going, how do I fix that? What would I need to do to get rid of that sense? Or how do I leverage it?
So 3 random examples that might help. So when I was a really young kid, my mum took me fishing and I got a hook stuck in my thumb. And when I walked down the river
That
now
was
in my
fun.
morning, yeah, very fun. And when I walk down the river now in the mornings, even though I know that's not going to happen, as soon as I see a fishing rod, I immediately feel it. I also had a nurse try and put a needle in my vein 30 times, and my arm blew up, bled all inside, and now I'm petrified of
Oof.
needles. I also know that sometimes when people talk to me in a patronizing demeanor, it reminds me of when I was in my headmaster's office getting told off by the headmaster. So there's 3 things I can track back to very young, which get triggered by life situations. Now, obviously, the needle and the fishing hook are sort of specific physical things that my body's like, whoa. But, when people talk to you in a certain way, and actually they're not the headmaster from when I was at school, and I'm not being naughty and punished in this moment, but the emotions can flood you, and then you can project out to that situation and damage that engagement because of what happened in your past. Is that something that you think people do and can be controlled, or the reaction can be changed? Because, well, I guess what I'm trying to say is we don't want to let our past baggage come and affect the journey towards our goal and derail us away.
Yeah, so it is inevitable that people are going to have those big emotional reactions. Being able to track it back, though, is super useful. And if you can do that, that's amazing. And yes, I think people can very much unwind those kind of emotional triggers. It's not going to be easy. The older you get, the harder it becomes, but it is always possible. And that goes back to, again, change your beliefs, change your values, alter your biology. And some of that, to really go into the biology. So there's a process called myelination. So what's ended up happening is every time you see a fish hook or a needle, or you feel like you're getting told off, you've so associated that with this thing in the past that you had this big emotional response to, that your brain now goes, to conserve calories, I'm going to myelinate these connections. So see a fish hook, feel this way, to make that emotion actually more efficient, because the brain is a just calorie hog. And to make your thoughts and emotional states more efficient, it literally hardwires those patterns. And so now the actual easiest thing for you to feel in those situations is the way you don't want to feel. And this is how people end up creating problems for themselves. So this is where now you have to let those atrophy. And the best way to let them atrophy is to create a new association. So what do you want to feel when you think of a hook or somebody's telling you off or whatever? And now you're going to have to practice that. You literally have to go through it over and over and over and rehearse it. And it starts with catching yourself. So it's what is known in psychology as a pattern interrupt. So you're going to pattern interrupt. You have to realize, oh man, this person's making me feel that way that I feel when I'm being told off by the headmaster. Remember, I promised myself I wouldn't react emotionally because that doesn't serve me, not because this guy's not a dick. Maybe they are, but I'm still not going to react emotionally because that doesn't move me towards my goals. So, okay, cool. I'm catching myself, pattern interrupt. I'm going to do whatever you're going to do to stop yourself from emotionally spiraling. Could be a simple mantra that you say. So for instance, I remind myself if I ever start to feel overwhelmed, I don't do overwhelm. Doesn't mean I can carry an infinite weight. I can't. But by reminding myself that I don't do overwhelm, I can assess this one and be like, okay, do I need to be tougher in this moment? Or do I need to say, I can't do that. I need to back off. But either way, I don't do overwhelm. So I'm not going to let myself get, completely out of whack here. I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to whatever I think that this situation warrants. So by doing that, pattern interrupting, practicing, feeling a new emotion, going through a new cycle over time, and it will take time, you'll be able to atrophy those old connections and build new connections. And then look, there are far more intense ways you can do through therapy or pharmacological interventions with psychedelics, whatever the case may be. Some really interesting data coming out of studies on that now. But yeah, if I were having that sort of high emotional reaction to something that wasn't serving me, I would find a way to atrophy the wrong setup and hardwire something new.
Right now, your personal data is being sold and exploited, and probably without you knowing. Every day, countless companies are invading your personal privacy by buying and selling your data for their profits. But the good news is there's a way to opt out of this, and this is why I'm excited to partner with Incogni. Because what Incogni do is they work, hustle, and force on your behalf in the background to remove all of your personal data from all of these intrusive databases, marketing lists, and companies. So to stop the spam and protect your privacy, go right now to incogni.com/disruptors to get an exclusive 60% discount off an Incogni plan. That's incogni.com/disruptors, or click the link in the description. Is conflict necessary to be successful?
Ooh, yes. Now it becomes a question of, are you good at knowing when to lean into the conflict and when to give grace? So grace is one of those words that sounds super lame, but it really is the best word that I can think of. So here's how I think of it. All of us are morons in 1,000 little ways. And I will often see people force other people to embrace all the ways that they're being a moron. And that to me is really stupid. What you want to do is remind yourself, yes, I have all my weirdnesses where I do some dumb thing, where I'm pushing on something I shouldn't push on. I'm telling a little lie to save face, whatever. All the things we want that other person to acknowledge in real time. And I'm like, classic example. You're in an argument. You know you're right. They know you're right, but they don't have an exit ramp. You're not giving them one. You need them to admit that they were wrong. That's a very unwise form of conflict. Now, I might say, hey, we're not going to do that thing, but depending on the situation, I may offer them and say, oh, weren't you saying something like this before? I might even be just regurgitating your own idea. Now, I may know that's a lie. They may know that's a lie, but it gives them an off-ramp where they were like, yeah, actually, I was really into that idea. That one works a shocking amount of the time. But knowing that I could just as easily be the person that's now doing a dumb behavior, because I've done so many dumb behaviors in my life. So I'm going to give that person grace. I don't need them to embrace that. I'm not going to run around saying like, oh my God, that person just couldn't admit when they were wrong, which you see online all the time. And I would just be like, cool, I get it. I hope you give me grace when it's me being foolish. I'm going to give you a little bit of grace. I'm going to offer you an exit ramp so that you can save face. And then as long as we're doing the thing that we need to do to move towards our goals, I'm a happy camper. But if we're doing something that's not moving me towards my goals, I'm freakishly blunt. And I really believe that people need to face their inadequacies. And so I'll tell people like, hey, this is the thing that you're doing. I don't think it makes any sense. You're not good at this. This is something I say here all the time. People, they can just say to my face the things that I'm not good at. And I will equally say to their face, these are the things you're not good at. I will say it in front of other people, which is like, leaders will tell you that's terrible. I will tell you, if you can't do that, you're never going to get where you want to go, because you create a whisper culture, which is terrible. It's a whole different topic. So I will tell people to their face, I will say it in front of other people, this is what you're not good at. But I will also make sure that I'm giving them an exit ramp, that I'm making more deposits about the things that they are good at, that I'm making withdrawals pointing the things that they're not. So yes, you cannot be afraid of conflict, but man, you need to be artful.
What are you not good at then, Tom?
Oof. You want that in alphabetical order or order of importance?
Oh, order of importance,
Uh,
like the biggest thing.
okay. Yeah. So the biggest thing that I'm not good at is my memory is god awful. And if my memory were better, I would be, I mean, I guess depending on how much better my memory was, twice as successful, 10 times as successful, that really matters. I also am a very slow thinker. I am a deep thinker. I can get to good answers. I can solve novel problems. I can think from first principles, but it really takes me a long time. And I have suffered tremendously because I get to a right answer, but whoa boy, do I have to fail and just experience the tragedy sometimes of that failure for me to finally find the answer. So those are two things that really have an extreme impact on my quality of life. Now, anytime people that know me hear me say that I'm not a fast thinker, they always want to argue. So I will say, just to spare the comment thread, I'm not as fast of a thinker as would be useful for my business. So if I were a faster thinker, I would get better results. It has a material impact on the quality of my life. It has a material impact on my business. Look, nobody should cry for me. I have a great life, great business, but I am hyper aware of my limitations. So yeah, those things have a day-to-day impact on my life.
What do you think about the theory that you should never let neither nor both criticism or praise get in the way of your goal or your mission?
Well, that's for sure. I don't think you should let anything other than your ethical compass get in the way of your pursuit of your goals, as long as you prioritize your goals well. So, for instance, my number one goal is not success. It's not my business. It's my marriage. And so I prioritize that accordingly. And again, I don't let anything other than my ethics get in the way of my marriage. So, yeah, I think that that's very, very important.
And do you think it's very easy to get distracted by both criticism and praise?
I think it's very easy, especially by criticism. While it's a very sort of advanced level class to say to somebody, hey, don't believe the praise or don't like give into it. Don't let it overrun your emotions because then you open yourself up to the criticism. And that is very true. But I think just the vast majority of humanity is so caught up in the negative things that are happening to them. Man, give them the wins. So my advice for the average person is you have to be really, really careful to have a value system that you believe in, that is stated, that you are clear about, that you are living in accordance with, and that every day you just run a tally. Did I live in accordance with my values? If you lived in accordance with your values, then today's a win and you should feel good about yourself. If you didn't live in accordance with your values, then yeah, you should say, hey, I didn't do it today. I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm going to refocus. But that way, when people are coming after you, you can look inside and say, am I living in accordance with my values? And as long as you assess your values and you believe that they're honorable, then cool. I have honorable values. I'm living according to them. The fact that other people disagree, fair enough. Like I can't control what other people think, but I can control whether I live according to my values or not. And I really believe that is the single most important thing that will control the quality of your life is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. So yeah, I think people should be really thoughtful about that.
What are the downsides of being $1 billion entrepreneur?
I mean, look, more money, more problems. That is for sure. That is very, very true. When people think that there's something they can get from you, they will come after it. So you have to be careful. But other than that, to become that kind of person, you've really stacked a lot of skills. And so I just wouldn't spend time complaining about it. The reason I can't give like a super fast downside, other than yes, legal things, that's going to be real. That's definitely in the Mo Money, Mo Problems book. But to become the kind of person that you need to become in order to generate that kind of wealth is worth all the trade-offs. Okay, so what are the trade-offs? You're going to work a lot. There's no doubt about that. You're going to have a level of clarity that other people don't have. You're going to have to get control of your emotions. It's a level of discipline that's really, really intense. You are going to sacrifice some things. It's just a reality. There's only so much time in the day. Yeah, I mean, those downsides are real. You're going to get things like family members that need financial help. They're coming out to you. You're going to get people that ask for your advice and then don't take it. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, those are really, really a small price to pay for gaining the set of skills that allow you to execute at that level.
So you founded Quest Nutrition. What would you say was the biggest scam you ever saw in the nutrition industry?
I mean, honestly, the biggest scam is perpetuated by the food industry itself, which is when we were at the height of Quest, people didn't understand that sugar was the problem. And so the overconsumption of sugar will literally kill you. And that message now is not really controversial, but whoa, boy, 10 years ago, that was controversial. So that is terrifying to me that people were told that fat is the villain, that carbs are A-OK. Many people still don't understand that there really isn't biologically a difference between just carbohydrate and sugar. By the time it becomes glucose in your bloodstream, it's the same thing. Look, I won't say that when N of one, when I eat high sugar foods, ice cream, we'll let ice cream be a stand in, or because most people are they might focus in on the dairy, anything with just a massive amount of refined sugar, I feel worse. I will get my gut feels weird in a way that I can overeat other kinds of calories. Like I can overeat sweet potato, let's say, and I won't have the kind of digestive distress that I will have with refined sugar. Now, it's possible that I haven't paid close enough attention that I'm just way overeating the refined sugar. It's possible. Doubtful, but possible.
Do you ever just relax, Tom? Because you seem very switched on, very thoughtful. Is that sometimes tiring for you? Do you ever just want to go, bleh?
No, so it's asking my wife is probably a better question. I think it drives her crazy that I am on all the time. Once you understand that you can become anything you want, but not everything, how you spend your time becomes a spiritual consideration. So I am obsessed with optimization and because I love it. So the thing that people need to understand, like I woke up today at 2 a.m. Now I don't set alarms, just when I woke up. I go to bed at 9. So it's 5 hours of sleep, not ideal. I would much rather sleep 6 or 7 hours, which is my average now is usually closer to 7. But because I love what I do and I've orchestrated my life to build the things that I want to do. Like to give you a, for instance, today. So I wake up at 2 a.m., try to fall back asleep. I can't. So I have a rule in my life. If you are awake, you have 10 minutes to get out of bed. Technically, it's if you're awake and you've had at least 5 hours of sleep. So let me caveat that. But today I had. So that means I have a 10-minute clock to get out of bed. Cool. Couldn't fall back asleep. I get out of bed and I immediately go to work. So this morning, I knew I was going to be live streaming. So I'm building a video game. I'm going to guess your audience either doesn't know me or they have no idea that I'm building a video game. But like I said, Impact Theory is about entertainment. It's not the part that I'm known for yet. Anyway, so I'm going to be streaming because we have our latest phase of our video game called Project Kaizen launches soon. And so I was going to be live streaming me playing Fortnite. Now, that's not exactly a struggle, but that's actually me marketing. So I'm doing one of the most effective things that I can do to market my upcoming product, but that happens to be playing Fortnite. So this is where people have to understand when you architect your life in a certain way, that all of a sudden things are a lot more fun. So for instance, I was obsessed with getting in shape during the Quest nutrition years. So being focused on diet and exercise and nutrition was like awesome. I was having a ball. So once you realize, oh, I can architect my life, now all of a sudden being on all the time and researching something while I'm brushing my teeth or listening to a podcast while I'm working out or streaming Fortnite or whatever, all of these things move my business forward. But that's not an accident. I built my business to be a thing where I could monetize the things that I would do for free.
Tom, you said impact theory is now about entertainment, and I think you said you're not known for that. So you've obviously gone on a journey. You mentioned before about personal development. I know you've interviewed lots of really successful people. So can you do just like a quick journey, a timeline of impact theory and where it is now and why you're taking it where you're taking it?
Okay, I'll give it to you in a small nutshell, and then anything you want to push deeper on, we can go. At 12 years old, I realized I want to be a filmmaker. I go to film school. I think I'm going to graduate and get the 3-picture deal. I do not. I graduate in 98. I have no idea how to break into the industry. I end up meeting these 2 very successful entrepreneurs, and they said, look, you're coming to the world with your hand out. If you want to control the art, you have to control the resources. So you should get into business and get rich. Thought that sounds amazing. I thought it would take 18 months. It took 15 years, but it worked. And so in that whole journey of I always thought I was 18 months away from being a filmmaker. My whole, literally since I graduated college. And so when I finally realized, okay, wait a second, I may never be able to get into film. I better do something that I love even in failure. Then all of a sudden, I started having a reason to tell stories. So I wanted to help people. That became like my whole thing. And in wanting to help people, I realized, oh man, I can actually do this through story. And so I'm at Quest and I'm like, hey, I want to exit Quest, start what I would have told you at the time was a film studio. I can finally do it. I've got the capital. So I exit Quest and I start Impact Theory. Literally, my last day at Quest was a Monday. And the next day on Tuesday, we start Impact Theory. Cause I was like, I've been building towards this for almost 20 years. And so I want to get started. So we launched it with the thing that I knew that I could do, which was I could talk about mindset, I could build an audience. And my thesis was I'm going to build this audience and then I'm going to write comic books and I'm going to tell my audience, go buy my comic book. And then the comic book, I'll be able to, it's a traditional feeder into film and TV. Comics will be able to turn into film and TV, but we'll have other people because Hollywood's eaten up way more guys that are far richer than me, just over and over and over. They come in, milk you for hundreds of millions of dollars. You never get the A teams anyway. It's a whole thing. So I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to create the IP. Then I want to sell the IP to Hollywood, let them take the big financial risk and I'll build my IP like that, following a model laid out by Disney, who started in these really short animation interstitials. Long story about that, but had learned a lot from that. That didn't work. There was a broken part of my thesis. That is the way that you build an audience has a straight line between the content that you create for that audience and the product. And I did not. It was completely erratic. I'm doing mindset videos and then saying, go buy my comic. And people are like, what? Like, I don't read comics, let alone your comic. So had to update that. So anyway, then you get into now as a host, I'm growing like a weed, having all this success, but I'm getting bored. And I'm asking the same questions and hearing the same answers over and over and over. And it gets to the point where, from a mindset perspective, I felt like, look, I can get better mindset answers than most of my guests. So I told my team, you're either going to lose me as a host or we're going to broaden the scope of the show. And I'll save you a lot of time. But we've gone through 3 phases and we're now in world affairs. It's me. My life, as I think about it, and Impact Theory as a company, is bifurcated between adults and kids. Adults are 2% of the impact that you're going to have in the world. Kids are 98%. But the thing that we're doing for kids is way more expensive, way more time consuming, because now I've left film behind. We can get into it if you want, but video games are clearly the future in my estimation. So 2.5 years ago, we started putting all of our not all, but most of our storytelling resources and our creative resources into gaming. And so we've released a couple phases along the way, and we're about to do a big release. But that is like, when I stream, I'll have like 30 people watching me. And I'm like, this is hilarious. I get almost 10 million views a month on YouTube. Sorry, 10 million views, a month on YouTube. And when I stream, I've got 30 people. It is hilarious. But I'll, just like when I started on YouTube, I had, one person watch my videos. We'll build it up and we'll see.
Thanks for the journey, Tom. Appreciate that.
My pleasure.
You said world affairs. So I'd love to know what you think of the state of the world right now, because
yeah,
go.
So if we're talking about the West, we are in a state of decline. We no longer know what our values are. And if you don't know your values, then you don't have an end state that you will be able to march towards. Or maybe we do have an end state and it's just very clearly, we'll round it to socialism. I have very strong feelings about what history tells you about that belief system. That is, I think, very early in this interview, I said, this moment in history is marked by people exchanging what sounds good for what works. Sorry, they're exchanging what works for what sounds good. And that is going to have huge consequences. I don't know if that's in 5 years or 100 years, but it will happen a lot sooner than 500 years. I will tell you that. History doesn't repeat, but it certainly rhymes, as people have heard over and over and over. And this is a super predictable cycle that's tied to debt. You don't have to look very far to see that the US for sure has got real debt problems. We add $1 trillion in debt in like every 100 days. That's not sustainable. So when you have the world's largest economy cratering itself from the inside, you have a problem.
So, do you think we're headed towards socialism, and why do you think that's bad?
Well, so you will have to define we. If you say the collective West, yes, I think that the collective West is marching down the path of empathetic suicide. What Gadsad calls suicidal empathy. He's literally writing a book on it right now. Shout out to Gadsad. He's amazing. And yes, I think that we're doing it because the world, from an evolutionary standpoint, humans are split between people that lean left in U.S. political language versus people that lean right. And I think that's good. And I think you want dynamic tension between the two. You do not want to get rid of either side. And when one side or the other gets unbalanced, then you have pathology. And we're in the cycle. You've heard this repeated ad nauseum, but this, again, you're having a biological experience, and the way that the human mind reacts, this is just a cycle. Strong men make good times make weak men make hard times. And so we are in the weak men part of the cycle, unfortunately, because things have been so wonderful. And because any one human doesn't see the cycle, they just see their part, they cannot help but play their role in either becoming strong or becoming weak. And it's just a reality. And so we are doomed to live on that loop. Unless AI breaks us out of it, I don't see any way not to exist on that cycle. And so here we are. You never know if your life is just going to be in a slow decline. Like, hey, life may be perfectly fine for the rest of any of our lives. Or it may break in Argentinian style, and we go from people need to look at the story of Argentina. It is unbelievable. They go from one of the most, if not the most prosperous nation in South America, certainly one of the most, to suddenly like that on a dime over a very short span of time. They end up just absolutely decimating their entire economy. And everybody thinks it can't happen here. And unfortunately, if you look backwards, every single empire, not most, every single empire has collapsed. Again, not most, every single empire. So it's a little bit like any human going, I'm going to be the first generation that lives forever. And I spent a lot of years saying that. And then at some point you go, what are the odds that every human before me died, but we're the generation that will live forever? Now, it will almost certainly happen to some generation. What are the odds that it's us? So anyway, I just think statistically speaking, it is far wiser to say every time socialism has been tried, it has been an absolute disaster. Every empire falls. It crumbles for super predictable reasons, including declining birth rate, including debt, including a loss of value system. So you've got the cocktail. So, but again, like I don't think people should, with my value system or my frame of reference, you would never look at the glass and say it's half empty. You look at the glass and go, people respond to ideas. So let me start talking about these incredibly important ideas, and hopefully we can nudge people in the right direction.
Yeah, the thing that was coming into my mind, because I mostly agree with what you said, Tom, is okay. So if good times have created weak men, then surely some strong men can stand up and just jump and butt the trend a little bit.
You would
We
hope.
we see the
And
cycle.
history says, yeah, history says that that won't work, but people do respond to ideas. And so I think that even if you just want to forestall so that the decline can be an easier landing and it's not a super abrupt crash, I think that people should go hard and they should put positive notions out into culture. They should look for things that uplift people. They should look for things that bring us together, that don't divide us. They should say, this is my goal. These are my values. This is how I think we get there. And if people would do that, if they would just define, this is my value system, this is the goal, this is the end state that I'm trying to march us towards, and I'm perfectly willing to look at the data to say we either are or are not moving towards that, not hiding behind complexity. The stuff is complex, but man, you can tell if you're moving in the right direction or not. And if you're not, then by definition, the things you're doing are not working and you need to change. But people don't want to do that. They want to score political points. They want to win. They want to be right instead of getting to the right place. And look, I don't have kids, but I think about how do I make the world better for the next generation? And when people think like that, then you get them thinking in the right way. If they're not thinking about that, or at least like think, I'm going to live forever. And so I want to make the world a better place for me. Fine. But if you're not thinking about long term, how do we make this a better place? Yikes. And so what people end up doing is they borrow from the future and all the classic things.
Is it okay to ask why you don't have kids?
I don't have kids because I really want kids desperately, desperately, but I just a little more desperately want to not have kids. This comes down to it's a little bit like people always say, I don't want to live forever, but I also don't want to die today. So it's like, I want to have kids. I just don't want to have kids today. Like, if I didn't have to worry about my wife, who's now, I mean, could we get pregnant? Probably, but God, that would be hard. It would be pretty medical miracle y territory at this point. But let's just say, if I didn't have to worry about that, then yeah, I'd be like, we're going to have kids, just not today. That literally would be my stance. If there was no biological clock, I'd be like, we are 100% having kids, just not today. And that's how it started. We were gonna have kids, literally for the first decade plus of our marriage. We were gonna have kids, just not today. And then suddenly it was like, do we really want to have kids? It's like, yeah, we do, but and then you just start facing biological realities. It'd be interesting. I've actually never asked my wife point blank, if you could have kids at any time, would you still think, oh, I'm going to have kids one day? I think she would. I think my wife would say, yeah, if I never had to worry about my biological clock, I'd have kids at some point, just not today. And then, and so my wife and I've talked about this a lot. People need to be very thoughtful because my wife and I have not been caught off guard by that. So we know now we're not going to have kids because it'd just be so hard for her to get pregnant. And we still have this sense of we want kids, just not today. But we know that we have to plan for the eventual phase of our lives where we will regret that decision. And I don't think people go into things eyes wide open, knowing that your psychology will change. So I know that my 80-year-old self is going to be like, hey, jackass, it'd be really cool if we had grandkids right now, but you didn't have kids. And so because you didn't have kids, we don't have grandkids, and that sucks. And so I know that. I'm planning for that. I'm making sure that I build my life in such a way that when I have a frame of reference where I won't let myself spiral in that way, that I will have young people in my life that I can mentor, that I can feel like I can impact. But I also have to understand, one, I really think that one of the most amazing contributions people can make to society is to have children. So now I'm like, okay, I have to contribute to society, and I have taken out one of the like coolest, most beautiful ways to do that. I think there are other amazingly cool, amazingly beautiful ways to contribute, but I've now closed a door to one of the beautiful ways that I could contribute to society. So it's like, okay, like now you've got to find a way to contribute. And I think that again, that's an algorithm running in my mind. And on top of that, that's my value system, is I believe that I should be contributing, which is why I think a lot about empowering people. And I think about putting positive ideas out into the world, so on and so forth.
Tom, what do you think right now are some meaningful missions that the world really needs?
I think that the thing I am most equipped to contribute to the world with is to get people to understand what I call the only belief that matters. The only belief that matters is if you put time and energy into getting good at something, you will actually get good at it. Now, again, once you understand that, your life, how you spend your time becomes a spiritual consideration. I think people can do a lot of amazing things for a society. I think I can contribute in a way that is thinking well through difficult ideas. And I see a lot of other people doing the same. Anybody that can contribute to bringing the world together, I think is incredible. Anybody that can bring the world to think from first principles, that's incredible. Um, Helping to make us multi-planetary, I think is incredible. Helping us deal with climate change in a way that doesn't create climate emergency where people are now doing things that where the cure is worse than the problem. I think those are huge. Population, huge. Finding ways to spread what I'll call enlightenment values. I don't know that everybody agrees on what that is now. I think that's hugely important. I think that that's benefited society and pulled more people out of poverty than anything else in recorded history. Um, Creating art, putting a smile on somebody's face. I mean, there are many, many ways, big and small. Food, that's a big one. Making sure that we don't keep messing up people's health is mahusive. Yeah, off the top of my head, those are some pretty meaningful ways to contribute.
Do you think the current system of governance, I know that there are nation states, but people talk about globalism. Um, do you think the current system is a blockage to all those meaningful missions?
Ooh, we'd have to define what we mean by the current system. So right now, I think that we are all in the grips of algorithms that are not transparent, that leverage our emotions against us. Uh, I think that we are discovering at scale the level of turmoil that social media brings, but I think every major technological advancement brings turmoil, and so you have to process through it. You have to figure out how you put brackets around things so that it doesn't get out of control. But it was written language that allowed for the rise of nation states, and boy, oh boy, have those done good and bad things. The rise of the printing press also influenced wars. And so obviously that is a religious wars, I mean, very specifically. So that's obviously been both a very good thing and a very bad thing. So the internet is going to have its share of challenges. AI is about to have major impact on society. In fact, another thing that people could be doing to contributing well is to make sure that we align AI. I think that's going to be hugely impactful. So yeah, I think it's to be expected, but I think that people need to understand that if we don't figure out how to navigate this well, that we're really going to be in trouble because of the way that it puts people in echo chambers, because of the way that it radicalizes people, because of the way that it creates massive anxiety and depression in kids. I think that probably we're going to see people realize you just can't let kids have social media, that if they're under, let's say, 16, it's just a non-starter. I'll be very interested to see the data keep coming out about that. I think that's going to be super important that people look at that. So yes, I think that we are moving through a super weird time right now, as many generations before us have done. So I do think the system is in need of refinement, but I'm not a burn it to the ground guy. I think that you want to adjust and not just say, this is the great evil and try to smash it to the ground. I think that'd be a mistake.
So how does an individual make an impact? So let's use the algorithms on social media as an example, because Andrew Tate's probably the greatest recent case study, I would say, of social media algorithms, where it seemed that he could create a frenzy. Some would call it turning into hate speech, and essentially hack these algorithms to create massive virality. Then there was obviously a big pushback against him, and then they all cancelled him. So they gave him the platform. He figured out the algorithm, but the algorithm's the algorithm. They gave him the platform. He went wildly viral, and then they turned and cancelled him, and then sort of washed their hands away, but couldn't really shut him down. I would argue that he wouldn't have been able to game the algorithm if the algorithm wasn't gameable, and if the algorithm had maybe more values, should we use your words, or some kind of virtue, this wouldn't have happened. I don't really know what the question is, other than how can an individual hold social media to account like we would hold police to account or our government to account with votes and things? Because it just seems like the social media platforms can do whatever they want.
Well, so I think the key is to make the algorithms transparent. They're super complicated, so I don't even think companies have to necessarily worry too much about it. But the future is going to be people saying, okay, I don't like the way that algorithm manipulates or whatever. I want one that does X, Y, Z. So this is where I think Elon Musk becomes incredibly important. First of all, he's made the algorithm for X available so people can see exactly how the algorithm works. I think that's super amazing. Community notes, I also think, is very, very important. Let other people say, hey, here's a fact check against this. I think that's very important. But as long as the human mind is gameable, algorithms are just trying to match the human mind. They're trying to basically take advantage of the human mind. So the algorithms are only as gameable as the human mind is gameable. But letting people choose their algorithm, letting them decide that frame of reference, the distortion through which they want to view the world, I think is really important. And people are going to wake up, just like they finally woke up to sugar. People are going to wake up to even your comments. The order in which you view the comments is determined by an algorithm. Like, they are really trying to maximize your engagement on the site. And as long as you understand that, then you become not unmanipulatable, because nobody's going to be unmanipulatable, but suddenly you begin to understand, going back to one of your earlier questions, you understand how the world works. And so, they're presenting these comments to me in this order. And that says something about me. So your algorithm says a lot more about you than it says about the company. And I think if people understand that, embrace that, make demands on the platforms to make these things visible, to ideally, that one, I think I get behind the government mandating that you make the algorithm transparent. As of today, I would say yes. I haven't looked into it closely enough to know if I'm right about that, but that feels intuitively correct. I would definitely start there. But I wouldn't want the government dictating what the algorithm has to be. I do not trust any centralized body to make those decisions. I don't trust any centralized body to make most decisions. I think it is a horrible way to make decisions. I wouldn't trust myself as the dictator. So I think people, in fact, man, for a while, I was really pumping this message. People need to distrust themselves. People trust themselves too much. Like people need to go into something going, I am a fallible human being and I do not trust myself to be right about all of these things. I want to know what other people think. I want other people to challenge me. I don't want only left. I don't want only right. I want dynamic tension. I don't want only me. I don't want only somebody else. I want dynamic tension between the way I see the world, the way other people see the world. I think that is critically important. So that's where I would like to see us go with social media for sure. We'll see how it plays out, but that's where I'd start.
Are there any newer, so let's say younger or TikTok or newer narratives and sound bites about being successful and wealthy that frustrate you or you think are really wrong?
There are age-old issues that people are always going to struggle with. People want to get rich fast. That's always a mistake. Even if let's say you pull it off. If you get rich fast, you won't have become the kind of person that you need to become in order to feel good about yourself when you're by yourself. So it is way better that be this like hard struggle that you claw and fight your way and then you finally get there, because the getting it is like, it's a fun moment for a minute, but the way that the human mind works is you will always have an appetite for more. I don't care how much you get. And so you have to understand that it's the pursuit. The greatest thing that life has to offer you outside of love is the moment where you're pursuing something at maximum effort and you really think it's about to come true. So in terms of my success, when it looked like, oh my God, I've just bled for Quest for years, and I actually think I'm about to become rich. This is crazy. That period was way more exciting than actually being rich. So, man, I live for that high, which is why, even though I'm very successful, I am constantly like, let's think about this. Going back to what I was saying about being a streamer who gets 30 people or less that show up to his live streams, and I'm full energy, man. I'm all in because I'm like, it is the build that I love. It's the growing it. It's the, I hope right now people are laughing at me, that they think I'm a fool. What is this guy doing? He's pushing 50 and he's in here playing Fortnite. Come on, man, what a loser. And I know not only am I going to build a huge following on streaming as long as it serves my business, but also it serves my business. And so that like push into something new, forcing myself to learn a new skill, growing an audience, like the gamification of my everyday life is awesome because I know that it's the pursuit, not the having, that matters.
Do you think that if you follow success principles, the laws of the universe, it is giving and rewarding every time?
No, definitely not. So there are 8-year-olds with leukemia and they die, and the parents did everything right, and their child still dies. Again, to all my religious people out there, I love you to death. I think religion is a great way to transmit values. Unfortunately, I am not a believer. And so my thing is just the world is not a fair place, man. That's it. It's literally physics, and then everything else just happens. So I don't think there's meant to be. I don't think that there is divine justice. I think we all do the best with what we have, and that's all you can and should ask. And yeah, it's not all going to work out. And I think the right question to ask is not, what would I do if I knew I couldn't fail? Because failure is the most likely outcome. The right question to ask is, what would I do and love every day, even if I were failing? And if you construct your life that way, like for instance, I may fail at building a video game, but it's the most fun I've ever had in business, bar none, without fail. Like I've built huge audiences. I've generated tons of money. But the thing that I love the most is building a virtual world. I couldn't have told you that that would be the most fun thing I've ever done. It's also the hardest thing I've ever done. But dude, it lights me up inside, but it might fail. And if it fails, which again is the most likely outcome, is I'm going up against some of the biggest entertainment companies on planet Earth. Uh, but boy, oh boy, will I have had a great time. I'll be sad. Don't get me wrong. I will be very sad. I'll be outright traumatized. I won't stay there, but the day-to-day grind of trying to build it is awesome.
Okay, so what do you think about the financial system right now? I know it's a broad
In
question,
the
but
US,
yeah.
very broad. So I'll give you a nice broad answer. In the US, the financial system is in like this crazy fragile equilibrium where if you pay attention to Ray Dalio, you understand we are balancing on a knife's edge. The debt is so problematic and virtually nobody is paying attention to it. We are now spending more on the interest of our debt alone than we are on military spending here in the US. It is pure insanity. And at the rate that we are going, it will not be too many years before basically all of taxes go to just servicing the debt. That's not sustainable. This is why people break into hot wars. You have to have a debt jubilee. Now, debt jubilee makes it sound good, but the reality is a debt jubilee usually comes at the cost of bloodshed. Where so many people die, people are just like, oh God, we just want the war to be over. And so you forgive a bunch of debts. But when you forgive debts, there was somebody who loaned that money and now they're not going to get it back. So their entire net worth is wiped out as you zero out somebody else's debt. So it is a brutal process that nobody wants to live through. Not the people whose debt is cleared out, not the people who obviously never get paid back. It's just unbelievably brutal. And we are, Ray Dalio, who I think is the right person to pay attention on this, pegs, the last time I looked at this, pegs our chance of civil war at, I think, 40%. So that's bad mojo. And if we were to break into civil war, oh man, can I guarantee anything? Absolutely not. But if we were at civil war, even if it was a fierce enough cold civil war where we're just breaking geographically, where all the states begin to fragment, you're going to see China probably move on Taiwan. Who knows what Russia is going to do? So yeah, it would not be a good time, and that will all be echoed in the financial milieu. And as we're recording this, the US stock market just got kicked in the face. Crypto got kicked in the face. So that instability where the Fed is now trying to control everything, the Fed is just a disaster. You should not have this being controlled from the outside. The Fed should probably just not exist. I'm conflicted on that, which people in the libertarian community want to punch me for. But the reality is, I kind of like that it exists. I just don't like how much it's involved. Printing of money is just, oh God, it's so dangerous. So dangerous. It's theft. Let's start with that. But if they could give me a world that was stable and wonderful, I might be willing to accept it. But they don't. They give me a world that's hyper choppy and they're stealing from people. Yeah, we could really go on a tirade there. You tell me how deep you want to go on that.
I want to go deep on that because it's one of my favorite subjects. So, why is the financial system theft?
The financial system in and of itself is not theft, but printing money is theft. Okay, so here is what people have to understand about printing money. It feels good because they print money and sometimes they give it right to you. So it's like, why does this hurt the middle class? So let's walk through COVID. Middle class would have gotten eaten alive if they hadn't printed money. So I was like, whoa, printing money is actually really good. Thank God this happened. I was so grateful. And then I started looking at it and I was like, wait a second. How does the money actually get into the system? When you get a stimmy check, okay, that goes direct to you, but it's a very complex way that money gets into the system where the Federal Reserve is actually essentially buying US debt. Now, who owns the US debt? People that buy bonds. Okay, so people that buy bonds now are getting their bonds purchased. They're getting protected. They're getting wealthy. This is why people say if you own assets, you're going to get wealthy. So everybody is buying up those bonds. They're keeping the whole market liquid and flush with cash, But the problem is that the middle class is not being able to take advantage of that by having the either the protection of their bonds or the stock market, which is almost certainly going to go up. Real estate's going to go up as the money is printed into the system because people are buying the assets in the system, or the reserve specifically is buying the assets in the system. But now people have the capital to buy the other things, so the number go up, as they say. Now, where the problem arises is that you didn't create anything new. And the creation of money is created out of thin air. We probably don't have time to go into exactly how, and I'm probably not the person to explain it. I could give you a really high level thing, but this shit goes deep fast. But money is just created out of thin air all the time, but it's usually in conjunction with people have done a thing. They created a thing. That means that there are more things in the world to buy with that money. Okay, so there's more things in the world to buy with that money. Prices hold relatively stable, or they actually go down because we get more efficient over time. When you print money, you didn't create a new thing. You have the same number of things that you can buy. Let's just say you have the same number of iPhones that you can buy, but now everybody has more money. So what do the economic pressures say? They say, oh, we have the same number of things, but more people can now afford it. So now you have demand is going up. What's going to happen to the price when demand goes up? The price is going to go up. So now you felt like you got more money, but the reality is you didn't you get more money. Your pricing power actually went down because now all of a sudden, if you had $100 in your bank, and let's say that they inflate the money supply by 10%, now, even though you still have $100, you have the spending power, the buying power of $90. It is exactly the same. It's exactly the same as if they had just taken $10. You just don't feel like it's the same. So everybody goes along with it. And now all of a sudden, when you look historically at inflation, it's insane. Your parents bought a house for $1.50 and it costs you like 1.5 million. It's not that crazy, but it's close. And so that's why people are like, wait, what the fuck? And so it seems like, if you're like me, that inflation is, it's just a fact of nature. It's not true. Things inflate because money is printed, pumped into the system. It disproportionately helps people that have assets, which are the people that are already rich, and it hurts the middle class and lower income people because even though they still have $100 in their bank, it only buys $90 worth of groceries. And people don't understand that 90 becomes 80, the 80 becomes 70, 60, 50, 40, 30. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, you've been eaten alive by printing money, which by the way, wars are fueled by printing money. Remember, you said you wanted to go deep on this. Why are wars fueled by printing money? Wars are fueled by printing money because normally the government would have to come to you, the taxpayer, and say, hey, we want to go to war with Russia. And then you go, yeah, I don't want to go to war with Russia. That sounds terrible. I'm not going to fund that. And Congress goes, boo, we don't have the money. We can't go to war with Russia. But if they can print the money, they don't have to ask you for anything. They literally just print the money. Let me say that again. They don't have to ask you for permission. They just tell the Fed, print money. And the Fed literally just makes money up out of thin air. They pump it into the system. They fund the war. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, I guess we're at war, but hey, no big deal. It doesn't matter because they didn't ask me. My taxes didn't go up. All is well. Your buying power is going from $9 to $80 to $70. And by the way, because this is one you're going to hear, but we've tamed inflation. We've got inflation back down to 2%. The problem is that's 2% on top of the 15% that it was up over the last 2 years. So that's why grocery prices still suck, because it doesn't de-escalate. It goes in one direction. The cost of things just keep going up and up and up and up. And that's why when you look at housing prices from 50 years ago, it is absurd how much they've gone up.
What's the solution then to this apparent Ponzi scheme of fiat currency?
Okay, well, this is where we get into, I will make bold statements just to give people directional things to look at, but this is so complicated, nobody has the answer. That's the real answer. But now let's talk the clip. What we should do is stop printing money, and we should stop going after Bitcoin, because Bitcoin allows money to be decentralized. When you decentralize money and it can't be inflated, now all of a sudden, people are no longer beholden to their government acting like a moron. They're no longer beholden to the Fed printing money. They just say, there's only ever going to be 21 million units of this thing, and I'm going to go get some of that. It literally can't be inflated. And now, cool, I have a place to store my wealth. Now, Tom Bilyeu believes that governments have a moral obligation to allow their citizens to save in a non-inflatable currency. And the reason that I believe that is I think it's evil, and I'm using that word on purpose, I think it is evil to steal money by printing. That is bad mojo. Now, that's the same guy that said, I was so glad during COVID that they printed money because I didn't understand the ramifications. I was just glad in the moment that people didn't get hurt. But the problem is, in the long run, you are stealing from people. You are turning people into degenerate gamblers because they can't keep up with inflation. So now you can't just be a janitor working a job and squirreling away some money to save because inflation is higher than the interest that you get on your money. So now you're actually disincentivized to save. That's crazy. That's crazy. And if people actually understood how money worked, they would be very upset because you should actually be able to work a job, save the money, and 100 years from now, that money still buys $100 worth of things. And it does not. 100 years from now, $100 will be worth some tiny fraction. You can actually map this out with the British pound. Over the last 100 years, the British pound has gone down in value something like 98%. I mean, that is directionally correct. If it's not 98%, I don't think it's less than 90. So it has dropped so dramatically that imagine if you're a 100-year-old, a dollar that you parents gave you on the day that you were born is now worth somewhere between 10 cents and 2 cents. That's offensive. That's evil. You can't do that. You can't do that because now you're asking the average worker who has busted their ass to figure out how to invest their money. That's gross, man. I don't like that. I don't like that. And I'm a reasonably sharp guy, and investing is tough. Investing is tough. And now you're asking everybody to do it. It's bad mojo.
Is there not also a problem of education? Because, my personal mission is to help as many people on this planet get better financial knowledge. And I realize the deeper I go down the education system is just designed there to back up the financial system. I don't think that there's anything such as a savings account. I think there's a store of money, and if you put it in a bank, that store goes down. And I think if you put it in something like gold and silver, that store probably goes up. But investing for the average person, you say, is hard. But French for the average person when you're 9 is hard. But by 13, you can get pretty good at it. So if we talk about investing and finance properly in school at the right age, surely we could get the baseline middle working class up to a level where they know how to manage money.
It would be a dramatic improvement over the status quo if we were to teach money and finances. There is no doubt about that. But anybody that's good at it will go do it, and they won't come back and teach it, which means by nature, the people that are going to be teaching it. Actually, I'm going to take that back. The way it will work in the future is one person will teach it very well online, and that should be broadcast to the world. That is actually what will happen. We live in an amazing time, boys and girls. So yes, I think that would be wonderful. I love seeing that shift where people are now getting educated by the smartest minds in the world in these super important and sometimes hyper niche things. But now one teacher can reach the vast majority of the world. So yeah, but I think that getting good at investing, because it is so dynamic, but I really want to set and forget. I make money. That money goes into my bank account. I don't have to worry about putting it here, there, anywhere. It's just, I made $100. It'll be worth $100 in 100 years. That's where I would love to. And then if people on top of that want to invest, because investing is great for growth, great for business. I love that. I want to see people have huge opportunities to generate wealth by investing. I just don't want to see people forced to invest.
Tom, what's a secret you've never shared or a story you've never told?
Oh, good Lord. Can you narrow it down? I don't know off the top of my head. I'm a pretty open book. If you point me in any direction, I can probably give you a better answer.
Okay, in your business career, some mad shit that happened that you haven't yet shared.
I don't know if I've ever talked about this on a podcast before. This is the first thing that came to mind. So back at Quest, I have a philosophy in life. It doesn't matter who you are today. It matters who you want to become and the price you're willing to pay to get there. And so my wife and I were talking like, do we really mean that? Is that just rhetoric? Or is that real? We're like, no, that really is real. So we're like, cool, then we would consider somebody for employment, even if they had a felony conviction, right? Yes. Okay. Well, we were in Compton at the time. So when you say, hey, dear local population, even if you have a felony conviction, we will consider you for employment, you get people lining up around the building. And so we were having to interview people 2 and 3 at a time. Now, the reality is you're not going to bat 1,000%. And so I one day had a guy come to me and he's like, hey, there's like a ring of people that are stealing from you. And I can prove it to you, and I'll call him up and tell him I want in on it, and I'll get him to confess to how he's doing it. And so, like a proper sting operation, man, I'm in the car with him. He tells me, be quiet. He calls the guy on speakerphone, hey, man, what's up? Like, hey, I know that you're, running this, whatever. He wouldn't have called it a scam, but you're doing this thing, and I want to get in on it. They go, oh, what do you mean? What do you mean? He's like, no, man, I know you're doing this, that. And the guy's like, okay, yeah, well, if you can do this, then okay, we'll let you in on it. And I was like, holy shit, like this guy is like for real doing like a sting bust. I feel like an undercover cop right now. It was crazy. So that was going back to what we were talking about earlier with suicidal empathy. It was like, all right, just because you want to give people a chance, like that's dope. But you also have to really scrutinize who are the people that have not left that world behind. Like they're not ready for a second chance. And so we really had to start like scrutinizing people a lot harder. And so I wanted to do a good thing, but I realized pretty fast, like you've got to be really careful. Malevolence is real. People will take advantage of you. You have to be really thoughtful. And so that began this process of me really realizing how much tougher I had to be. But we ended up, and we had some amazing people. But as I remind people now, I don't hire people with felony convictions anymore. Not that I like am super opposed if somebody had the right story, but it's like, ooh, that idea of just like, I want to create opportunities and, I'll work with people. It's like, it's too much work. You end up creating a drag on your company. And so I still believe it doesn't matter who you are, it matters who you want to become. But I need to see evidence of past success. I need to see somebody that's moving in the right direction already. Like I'm not going to be that jumping off point. Like you have to start, you have to put up walls. You have to come in ready to fight all the time. It gets pretty exhausting.
What's your most brutal life lesson?
Sometimes things don't work out. Now, if you want the specifics of where that's happened, for the first year of our game development, I spent millions of dollars. That was simply because I was too stupid to know better. And while I hope one day I make that money back, I may not. That first year was a kick in the face. It damaged my marriage. I was working 120 hours a week. It was grueling.
Would you do it again?
Yes, but way more intelligently. A lot of the things that people have heard me say over the last couple of years have been lessons that I learned in that period. So look, to your point earlier, suffering means that, hey, you're in a vein of something here. And I certainly had to endure that period of suffering, and I'm very glad that I did. And I earned a lot of my own respect by persevering. But when my wife said, you are now damaging our marriage, I said, look, I will find my way back to you. And I did. And I'm proud of the finding my way back to her, which was finding a way to limit the amount of time that I was working, to be way more efficient, to be smarter about the things that I was doing, to figure out what were the mistakes that I'd made, how do I avoid them in the future. So failure is a tremendous teacher, but the goal is to learn. And so I learned my lessons, and I shan't be repeating those. Let me tell you that.
What's the best advice you ever remember receiving?
If you want to make a woman orgasm, she has to trust you. That's real talk. That is arguably the most useful piece of advice I've ever received. And that came from my mom, by the way. Shout out to mom. She knew what she was talking about. I never would have guessed trust. That's just, for a guy, I just need a place that's warm and safe. Other than that, maybe not even safe. So yeah, very different.
What about the worst advice you ever remember receiving?
Ask yourself what you would do if you knew you couldn't fail.
Why is that the worst advice?
Because you're most likely going to fail. And so if it's only an enjoyable way to spend your time, if you win, you're going to waste years of your life, which I did. I wasted almost a decade of my life chasing money because I thought, well, this is what I would do if I knew that I couldn't lose. That was a waste. That was a catastrophic waste.
Why was it a waste chasing money? What were you not doing?
I wasn't realizing that I could enjoy the struggle. And once I realized I could enjoy the struggle, I got rich. But until I realized, oh, this is about stacking skills and adding value to people's lives and doing something you love and architecting your life in a way that, hey, on the upside, this could be massive, but on the downside, you may spend a decade doing this and have no money to show for it. So if at the end of this story, you're like, oh my God, that was an incredible, yes, we failed, but that was an incredible decade of my life. I love that. That's where I would be now. If impact theory failed, I'd walk away going, yo, that was awesome. I left it all out on the field. I played to win every day. We didn't win, but that was a ball.
This show is called Disruptors. What does the word disruptive mean to you, Tom?
To go into something that has a status quo, think from first principles, and deliver a better result.
And where can we follow you? Can you tell us what you're working on? Where are you commenting the most on, your future projects?
At Bilyeu on the socials, but the most important part for anybody watching this show would be something called Impact Theory University. That is a pride and joy of mine, where I teach all the lessons that I've learned over 20 plus years of building businesses. So if you're serious about building a business, getting more out of being an investor, we teach those kind of principles.
And if you could pick your two favorite parts out of your university, what would you shout out?
So we have something that is called Zero to Founder. And what that allows people to do is launch their first company. We walk people through exactly what you need to do step by step to go from working for somebody else and building their dream to building your own. And I love it. I love teaching it. I love the interactions with the students, and it's helped a ton of people launch their own companies. We've had people build multi-million-dollar companies after taking it. So I'm super excited about that.
Tom, I'm really grateful. Thanks for giving up 2 hours of your time.
Thanks for having me, man.
This has been a lot of fun. Thank you very much. Silver has crashed. It's back to its price in 1974, and I'm going to buy more. And if you'd like to learn how to invest and build multiple streams of recurring income, I recommend you join Money.School. Money.School is my global financial education platform to help as many people on this planet get better financial knowledge. For less than 4 Starbucks coffees a month, there are hundreds of hours of courses, resources, and masterclasses going back a decade to teach how to make, manage, and multiply money and gain financial freedom. So join thousands of other money and freedom seekers on the link Money.School and start today your journey to financial freedom and more money.